Good morning, everyone. So David Pierce was actually supposed to be the keynote speaker this morning, but unfortunately he was ill and he wasn't able to make it. But that's an opportunity for me to talk in front of everyone as if I'm also a huge expert in this field. I would turn off my PowerPoint presentation, and I've turned on Google Hangout Air. So hopefully all my mistakes are broadcast everywhere in the world. So I'll wait for the projector to start. So one of the reasons why I decided to research Ethereum is because I specialize in contract law, international law, and specifically WTO law as well. And I got interested in this idea of digital contracts or smart contracts. Of course, lawyers earn a lot of money by writing words, by writing contracts that are supposed to have a significant effect on future transactions. And now we have these software codes that can replace lawyers. So that was maybe a selfish motive for trying to research what these software codes are about. So what is Ethereum? It's a crowd-funded, open-source, decentralized software platform that runs smart contracts. It aims to create applications that run exactly as programmed without any possibility of downtime, censorship, fraud, or third-party interference. So this is actually what Ethereum Foundation, the actual foundation that created Ethereum, has to say about its creation. You would see that the central theme seems to be a decentralization, or trying to create a kind of a democratic version of contracts that are supposedly elite in nature. There seems to be a radical change that is happening. So I think the main characteristics or the main attraction points here are first that it's crowd-funded, that actually people can buy a digital currency called Ether and try to power these new contracts, these new applications. It is decentralized in the sense that there's no central authority that governs the way these contracts are run. Everyone can create their own application. Anyone with the right technical tools can simplify a contract and create a software code based on that. It supposedly protects against censorship because of the anonymous and decentralized nature of the applications. It can be a bulwark against the way governments may try to restrict contract formation or maintaining. There's, of course, little downtime because we have autonomous agents instead of lawyers creating these contracts or maintaining the contract. So instead of paying a lawyer $500 an hour for only 30 hours a month, we have these programs running 24/7. A really good deal if you think about it. It protects against third-party interference. And for a lot of parties, this is a really big deal. If you think about corruption, if you think about how contracts are not honored, this can be something that is very attractive to, say, huge banks that have credit card contracts with customers. It could be something that is helpful to the poor. If you have a contract, an autonomous contract, you can make sure that there's no middle person trying to take advantage of a legal system that is maybe developing. So we have these attractive factors of Ethereum, and there's a lot of interest in creating applications to further these goals. So one more reason why we want to talk about Ethereum is because it's seen as if it's part of a Bitcoin driven community, part of, say, Bitcoin 2.0 movement. We have multinational companies like Samsung, Citibank, and also many other banks. We have Barclays recently talking about this, who are experimenting with use of these kind of decentralized algorithms. This kind of investment is seen as important when it comes to IoT technology, when it comes to how financial payments, financial systems are going to change in the coming years. The technology has the ability to radically change the nature of financial transactions, but the most important part, of course, is not just the financial transactions, but the organizational structure of the banks, or the organizational structure of government agencies, or any other kind of centralized institution can be something that you have to look at. For example, recently Korea decided to decentralize its banking system. Many parts of Korean banks that are part of their central services is now open for competition. We have online companies coming forward trying to compete with core services that regular Korean banks provide. So they're fighting to stay relevant. If successful, it may have a significant impact on the structure, the hierarchical structure of these organizations, and hence on employment. So one of the reasons why, also why I'm interested in this topic, is because it changes the way people are dealing with these issues. It also changes what kind of jobs and what kind of employment situation at a macro level can happen, where you're taking away these, for example, these jobs that lawyers or financial analysts or accountants may have. So what do we mean by smart contracts? Like, the very basic way of looking at contracts, or a smart autonomous contract, is looking at a vending machine. So you don't need a lawyer to go to a vending machine. You just put in the money, you make an offer to a machine. The machine autonomously decides to accept the offer if it's the right currency, the right denomination, and then it gives you a product in exchange. So it is an autonomous, automatic transaction. Software algorithms that autonomously provide, verify, and enforce the terms of a contract. So smart contracts is kind of like a vending machine, but a sophisticated vending machine. An artificial agent representing you or your interest will create the terms of an offer, and another autonomous agent representing the other party's interest will maybe accept or reject these offers. And based on these two interactions, or multiple interactions between autonomous agents, a contract is formed and then maintained. Ideally, this should proactively embed itself with physical objects to gain digital control and manipulation of physical property. Now, how would you have a smart contract embedded with, say, a washing machine? Many of you may heard of these various ideas that are related to Internet of Technology issues. For example, and I like to talk about this example because I always think of my mom loving this idea, of one button you can use on a fridge. If you need to buy something, you just press that one button, and the fridge will communicate autonomously with your supermarket, with the credit card information you have, and place an order for that one item. So for my mom, maybe that item is chocolates, even though she's diabetic. And maybe autonomously the order is placed, and then you receive the order in the next half hour. So this kind of autonomous contracts between appliances, between things, is something that can be greatly enhanced in the future. It can ideally and cheaply enforce contractual terms. It greatly increases cost of non-compliance. So if you're going to have these autonomous decisions made very quickly in real time, if you don't have the necessary conditions to fulfill certain parts of the contract, you can easily be rejected or have to pay for some compensation if you weren't able to comply with the contractual terms. So what do we mean by a contract? So if you're thinking of just a basic contract between people, we're thinking of a legally binding agreement that is enforced by government agencies, enforced by the police, enforced by the courts. By mutual agreement, each party is legally bound or legally bound not to do certain acts. So you either act or you either are bound not to act in a certain manner. So the 6 main elements here. There should be an agreement. It should be between competent parties. It should be based on genuine assent or agreement, supported by consideration, made for a lawful objective, and in the form required by law, if any. Now, the 5th part, of course, is the easiest to understand. You should not be able to have contracts that are illegal. If you have illegal contracts, they're null and void by default. The 6th one, in the form required by law, if any. Actually, the way contract law has developed, it's really easy to form a contract. Suppose you're drinking with a buddy and you decide on a great idea for a new startup. And you decide on a contract by writing on a piece of paper or on a piece of napkin, and the contract is actually legally enforceable. It's if you exchange emails, if you exchange faxes, if you just talk to each other. So the form in which the contract can be made is very, very flexible. Law generally is very eager to enforce contracts. So of course, if we apply this kind of logic to software programs, we can think about how easy it would be to say that a software algorithm can also be a legally valid contract. So let's look at supported by consideration. Now here we're talking about, in the case of Ethereum, digital currencies. We're talking about Ether. So a special kind of Bitcoin-like coins or gas, the way they describe it. Something that fuels the contractual, the maintaining the contract itself can be something that is shown to have an exchange of value that creates a legally valid contract between competent parties. So of course here we're talking about people, we're talking about natural persons, but even companies have contracts. So by extension, artificial agents or software programs that have been given approval from you can also be considered to be competent parties. So actually, just based on these 6 elements, we can say that smart contracts can easily fulfill, based on how they evolve, all the 6 elements under common law. So I won't go into the main types of contracts into detail, but they're express and implied. If you go into a store and you want to get a haircut, you're not going to have an offer. The person is not going to make tell you that you have to pay a certain amount. You just go in, get a haircut, and you pay. So it's an implied contract. An express contract is where you actually have to talk to each other or express your intentions to form a contract. Formal, informal. Formal example of formal contract would be a check, a money order check. So something by default, just by looking at it, you know that it is a contract. Informal would be most types of contracts. So actually, if you think about the way smart contracts have developed, one could say that they're informal contracts. Usually they're expressed in the form of software code. And usually they would be bilateral in nature because there's going to be an exchange of autonomous software. Am I running out of time? Okay, I'll be fast. There'll be an exchange of software interactions, which causes a bilateral executor or executed informal express contract. So the other forms of contract, of course, internet contracts are something that are common when you're, say, buying an item online. So under all of these contracts, one would say that software-based contracts are under the main category, the most popular category of contracts. So this is an example of how smart contracts can change the way contracts are created and maintained. In Ethereum, 2 types of contracts can generate and receive transactions. And this is actually something that's commonly used as examples. So we have actual people or bots and contracts. And a contract is an autonomous agent in the Ethereum network with an Ethereum address and balance. It can send and receive transactions. So Nick Szabo, who is who's considered to be one of the leading experts on Bitcoin, gives this example of smart cars and example of how they can be used in a way that Ethereum is being used. So a contract is activated every time someone sends a transaction to it, at which point it runs its code, perhaps modifying its internal state, or even sending some transactions and then shuts down. The code for a contract is written in a special purpose, low-level language consisting of a stack, which is not persistent and has many memory entries. This is the form that constitutes the contract's permanent state. So Ethereum users will be provided with a simple C-like language in order to create these transactions. So as a lawyer who is scared of math, this is actually terrifying for me. So you're basically changing the fundamental language of contracts from words to codes. And I was recently researching Ethereum developers in Canada, and I came across a 15-year-old boy who hired a software coder from Hong Kong to write a smart contract for a fairly big transaction. So you are actually democratizing the way contracts are made because of the form in which they're made. So the smart cars example, I'll just read the first paragraph. So companies have security protocols to embed in a property like a car. And so, for example, if you have an Ethereum-based or a smart technology-based car, then you can think about the ways in which you can autonomously enforce the terms of a contract, even if they may hurt the consumer, even if they may have adverse reactions. So one of the ways in which Ethereum will have large-scale applications is through many ways. We have IBM and Samsung investing in IoT project. Recently, the various founders of Ethereum presented at SIAI KAIST conference. They had several private meetings with company officials here. He has a strong affiliation with the Korea Meetup group in Seoul. There's a decentralized Uber project, for example, have smart cars instead of regular cars, no drivers. We have a decentralized internet marketplace project, decentralized board election and democracy or voting project, and so on. So ideally, Ethereum is supposed to greatly enhance big data, privacy, security, law, decentralization, and efficiency. But one of the main concerns here is exactly the same things. That when we have these autonomous projects going on in real time, using real-time data, we have problems with big data. We have problems with keeping this information secure. We have problems with the law, how the law is going to be developed, who has the power to create these laws, these contracts. They're very efficient in the way they're being formed, but at the same time, the fact that they're autonomously going to be enforced can be problematic because you're cutting off a way to look at the system in a more patient and timely manner. And finally, of course, technological unemployment. It can have adverse effects on people whose jobs depend on creating these contracts, maintaining or enforcing the contracts. So it has many concerns. Okay, so I'll stop talking, and I try to go through the PowerPoint very quickly, but I'm open to questions if I have time. Okay. Yes, and actually, David Orban told me that he owned the first Ether.
That's right. I was the first person on the planet to own Ether. Yes. What is your opinion between the opportunities that these systems are designing and the regulatory frameworks that, in a differential way from country to country, are either embracing or are trying to postpone the changes that these opportunities are bringing?
One of my main concerns with the way law reacts to technology is that it reacts very slowly, and by the time it reacts, usually the reaction is negative. So one of the ways in which I think there could be legal reform is to proactively approach these ideas, try to create public awareness of the issues surrounding these new technologies, and with greater public awareness, there could be a more nuanced view of how we can address the problems, instead of having, say, in New York City, we have or New York State, we have licensing, regulatory licensing of Bitcoin now. So the way we can try to address these problems is try to create more public awareness and try to create more legal awareness of the issues. So I think that's probably the way forward.
When sort of advanced things were introduced into the financial system with very complex constructions, this didn't result in a sort of a complete unmitigated success. So there is still the issue that you can write contracts which are very hard for anyone who's not a lawyer to understand. In fact, it makes it easier for lots of people to do it, especially when there's results in computer science by which if you have a certain level of complexity, you can't really predict what the algorithm or what the sort of contract actually means. How do you see these sort of issues playing out?
I mean, of course, having complex software-based contracts is probably going to create many problems. Like in the 2008 recession, we had complex financial transactions that created the recession, but people weren't very sure how to deal with them or how to improve them. I think that moving forward, the complexity, I don't think, is going to go away. Like, even, as you said, even in regular contracts, there's a degree of complexity that stops people from actually trying to understand what the contract is about or trying to implement it correctly, if I understood your question.
Partially. I mean, like when you click on something for downloading.
Right. So I agree to the terms and conditions.
Yes, it's extremely complicated and mostly irrelevant.
Right, completely filled with legal jargon.
Because what actually the company can get from you is mainly determined by the laws in the countries involved. Yes, so it's as I say, I'm more. So yes, so there's still going to be a lot of legal implications, especially if some people are more adept at constructing algorithms that actually don't seem to do anything nasty, but actually, when you fully parse out what they say, it's a thing that gives them huge amounts of money for practically nothing. But that's not obvious because it's obfuscated by and you can always obfuscate things. Is this Rice's theorem? It's related anyway. Mm-hmm. You can always obfuscate things in ways that are in principle undetectable until it's too late.
Of course, like if you think about just regular contracts, yes, the kind of legal jargon we're talking about and the kind of legal jurisdictions will be completely changing the way the contract is enforced. And when it comes to algorithms, of course, this problem is going to greatly increase. We're changing the English language or whatever language you're writing the contract in and actually writing everything in code. So it completely changes how complex the situation would be. So I do agree with you that it could be even more problematic because of that. No. Any other questions?
Is there foreseen that there will be that somebody can explain what is happening? So not only the code is visible, but what it does must be explained.
You mean the actual process of the transaction?
Well, the content.
The content.
Explainable to a non-technical person.
I think Yes, so that is one of the biggest problems, that you're writing the entire thing in code, so nobody can just download the information and read it by themselves. So even if you have the entire code ready and available for public viewing, you would still require a certain level of expertise in order to understand it. And
I turned into some kind of ontology to make it more open and accessible.
That could be one of the approaches, yes. But right now, we are not very clear what it is, what purpose it can actually serve. So I feel like there just needs to be more awareness of this technology and what this technology is aiming to do. And based on that, then maybe we can, of course, we want to have a more open and more, a more freely accessible information source. But also at the same time, these are contracts, so not all the parties involved in the contractual transactions will want to have them available for public viewing. I mean, it's not like a patent or other legal or other kinds of information sources. Yes.
I'm just sort of thinking what level this might be. We already have social bonds and sort of say friendship, which sort of and reputation, which sort of enforces contracts at a very low level. So then we have sort of its analog on say Facebook or chat rooms or stuff like that, but they don't work as well. So I'm wondering if you're thinking of something like that. Maybe sort of a quick thing for people on some Facebook group, say, wouldn't it be cool if we did something? You pass a quick contract just to ensure that everyone does a little bit of what they say they'll do. And so are you sort of seeing, I'm just wondering sort of what sort of the big changes or the stuff it's not happening today that would happen
with this kind of technology.
Yeah.
Microtransactions, of course, but also in terms of enforcing contracts. So if you have a kind of any kind of financial contract where there are a lot of defaulters, that can be a very attractive way to attractive avenue for Ethereum. So for example, if you're taking a loan to buy a car, or you're taking, if you have a credit card arrangement, and you may default on the loan, or you may want to keep the car even if you're not making the payment. So I feel like this is where it can become more problematic, where you have the technology embedded with physical objects, and it is autonomously enforced. So it can have real effect on you, even if you may have a reason, for example, to not follow a certain term, or there's an erroneous real outside data that has influenced the way the contract has moved forward. Any other questions? So I will stop the broadcast for the next. No, actually, but he requested.
Oh, okay. So the broadcast cannot be restarted. All right. You don't want it to be broadcast?
Preferably not.
Okay. Okay, and then.
Or we could turn off the audio.
You can turn off the camera and the audio.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So apologies to the people listening in at the moment. Are there people listening?
I don't think anyone is listening. Correct?
Zero viewers, so we're fine.
It is also recorded at the same time, and it will stay on the channel.
Yeah.
So anybody will be able to replay it after the fact.
I see.
But you can cut out bits, can't you?
Well, we are not going to broadcast it